Well, with us now in the studios is a man who has a degree in physics, and who was a teacher and indeed an astronomer for a few years, all of which was well before he became lead guitarist with one of the world's most successful rock groups, and I'm talking about Brian May. Brian, you're very welcome to the show. Come on.
Brian is one of the most eccentric people that I've ever met. He's quite brilliant. When we met, he was doing a PhD in infrared astronomy, and he happens to be a damn fine guitar player. Also a complete nightmare to work with at times.
Every time I'm in the same room with Brian, within 5 minutes we sort of...
Sparks fly.
Yeah. I haven't hit him yet. But there's still time.
My mum says I wanted to be a surgeon, but I don't remember that.
There always was this thing about me that I sort of felt that I'd missed out on life by being an only child, I think. And I think that I thought that explained some of my endless running around looking for the right woman to sort of share my problems.
I was a bit restricted because my parents were very much of the idea that you shouldn't do too much going out, you should stay home and do your homework, and you should get your academic stuff right, and then when you're about 20 years old, then perhaps you can go out into the world, you know. So I was a bit too sheltered, really, because I was a very insecure young boy, probably because I was a bit sheltered, you know. And whenever I did go out to those things, I used to think, oh my God, I don't know what to do, I don't know what to wear, I don't know who I am, you know.
How did you first get involved in playing the guitar, Brian? How old were you when you started?
Very young, I think 7 or 8 years old.
Did you have formal musical training?
Yes, but not for the guitar. I had piano lessons from the age of 11 to 13, something like that. But the things I got interested in were my father's ukulele, which I used to play. And it's an easy thing to pick up chords on the ukulele because it's only got 4 strings. And my father taught me 3 or 4 chords, and I went from there. And that was the time when, or soon after that time anyway, was the time when skiffle came along and everybody picked up a guitar. My dad helped me make this tiny little crystal set when I was a kid, and it had earphones. So when I was supposed to be sleeping at night, I was under the covers with these earphones listening to Radio Luxembourg and hearing all the beginnings of rock and roll, really. It was a very exciting time to be a young kid. You used to listen to everybody you could get your hands on, you know, you pick up all the records and copy them, and you have kind of competition to see who could play them fastest and earliest. We're listening to rhythm and blues records, you know, so it was very cool to say, oh yeah, well, of course I don't really like the modern beat music. I like Chuck Berry and I like Bo Diddley and everything, but secretly everyone was going home and studying their Hank Marvin licks, you know. My dad was a great electronics engineer and a craftsman. So me and my dad set about making the guitar. Really it happened because we couldn't afford a guitar. I couldn't afford a Stratocaster or a Gibson or whatever, and we thought we can make a guitar. Maybe we can make something that's better than anybody's ever made. And so we drew out our own designs, really, from scratch. So it's all made from strange objects, pieces of junk really, a fireplace, a saddlebag holder, a knitting needle, some motorbike valve springs.
You made the knobs?
Oh yes, a piece of shelf edging. Yes, stuck around. Yes. Pieces of mother of pearl buttons.
I always know when Brian has put a bit on somebody else's records. Even if he hasn't told me, I know it's this guitar.
And eventually we put a kind of group together, and we used to go around each other's houses and just play in, my mum's living room or his mum's living room. Eventually we played our first gig. I remember what it was. We were called 1984. This is way before 1984,
I was happy here, but I was also very lonely here, I think, strangely enough. And I was one of those people who worked very hard. I also played very hard, I was always playing guitar and stuff, but I wasn't really a social animal. We would always sit in the same place, and our little clique from physics would always sit over here, and there was a clique from biology that would always sit over there. And I remember being totally in love with this girl from biology, and I never ever talked to her, which is the weirdest thing, isn't it? So you probably think I'm a rock star and this very confident person, but I wasn't. I was here very much as a student and sort of, I think, feeling rather enclosed by the system.
The first time I heard Brian play ever, I remember I was very particularly impressed with the sort of touch and tone, which was a sort of had a musicality I hadn't heard before. Its touch is part of the sort of tone, isn't it? It's a sort of vibrato thing. It's very, very musical, very melodic style.
My recollection is the same of Roger, really. First hearing him tune up his snare. I'd never seen anybody tune a drum before. The drummers I knew just sort of played it the way it came from the shop, I think. So Roger was doing these very very musical rolls on the snare, just before he touched anything else. And I remember thinking, that's, I hadn't heard that kind of thing before.
And it was when Smile broke up, and Brian and I decided we liked working together, and we wanted to form a new band called Queen, which we did with Freddie.
In the fast-moving field of fashion, London leads the way. A trendsetter city with the emphasis on youth.
The attraction of Biba was that the girls who worked in there were so beautiful, and they were dressed just right, they were well presented as well, and we used to just go in there to sort of enjoy the scenery. I know Freddie did as well. One of those ladies was Mary Austin. And I met Mary at a concert in Imperial College, my own college, and just sort of got chatting to her because she was sitting behind me. I was pretty shy, but somehow I plucked up the courage to ask her out. And we went out a few times. She was very wary of anyone. And so we would generally just sort of go out for a drink and say goodnight and sort of a quick peck on the cheek, and that was it, really. We'd never really got beyond that. But there came a point where Freddie started to talk to me about her, and it became obvious that Freddie wanted to go out with her, and I said, well, look, we're not really going out as such, we're just good friends, so I'll introduce you to her. So I did. I think we had very little idea of what was going to happen. We had a few dreams, a few ambitions.
We said we had to take this as a serious commodity, otherwise we don't do it at all. So that took a lot of planning, meaning we had to really sort of feel in ourselves that it was going to be a worthwhile thing, and that's what we really wanted to do. I think Brian was the main person. We had to really make sure that he wanted to sort of partake in that, because he was a serious musician or whatever. We nearly sort of disbanded because we felt it wasn't, but I think something kept us going.
At that point I thought, well, it's a fair deal, I've given all I can to this, and I have this feeling inside me still that if I don't pick up the guitar and do something, I'm going to regret it for the rest of my life. So I had to do it in the end.
We had incredible belief in ourselves, quite blind and ridiculous belief in some ways, but we did have this kind of belief that we could do anything that anyone else could do.
The biggest thing was to actually make an album and have an album on the piece of plastic and have it there so that people could buy it, and perhaps our children could still buy it, and their grandchildren. And the second thing was to play some of the concert situations that we knew.
wonderful. He's got a big cock.
I think it's our style, you know. If we do something, then we do it to excess, and we do it as hard as we can do it. And yeah, it's very overblown, it's very over the top, but it's fun and we like it. That's the way we are. I mean, there is a fashion at the moment to discount presentation in songs, but we've always thought it was important. And it's noticeable, even with groups who aren't particularly concerned with presentation, that people notice how a thing's done rather than what it is. First of all, you notice the kind of My dad was very against it in the beginning because I think he saw in my education and the place I had got to, the place that he would have liked to have got to. He never got his degree, so it always held him back in his life. So he saw me with this fantastic degree in science and a whole world opening up to me, and it looked like I was walking away from it. So yeah, he was very upset, and we hardly talked for about a year or so, maybe more. And the funny thing was, you know, he was very against this, but all the time I was starting off with Queen, he was drawing little maps and charts of how the record sales were doing, and he was following with great detail what I was doing. So he was always kind of into it. He just didn't say that to me. We were playing Madison Square Garden, and I said, "Look, Dad, this is a big one for us, playing America. It's New York. It's the first time we played this amazing place. Come over." And they came to the gig, and then I went back with my dad, and my dad said, "Okay." He said, "Okay, I get it now." Thank you, Madison Square Garden. It's not the answer to life's problems, but I think that music has a place in people's lives, which is very important, you know, and not all of us can go and solve the problems in Cambodia, you know, and that's what we do, you know, we make music, and I don't feel ashamed of that. And especially I don't feel ashamed of being on stage and communicating in this way with people. I like it a lot. Anything, I would say for Freddie, I would say impulsive singing.
Impulsive.
Mm-hmm. Impulse, acting on impulse. You know, and for John, I would say thoughtful. Mm-hmm. And for Roger, I hope they don't find out what I say. For Roger, I would say, I wish there was a special word for it. Hedonistic. Try that one. It means pleasure-seeking.
How about writing lyrics? Does it differ much from your writing music, or do the lyrics and the melody come at the same time?
Normally together. Normally lyrics arrive with the words, except I usually have to work very hard on the last few. Yeah, writing helps me a lot. And if I'm not writing, I think there's something wrong with my life at the time.
If you're singing, the guys are going to go through it. Yeah, if you carry on a bit.
Brian's got his own sort of writing ideas, and they're very sort of strong to start with anyway. So I mean, he's just I don't seem to be able to get into his ideas so much. But in a way, that's quite good. I'd rather leave it to him, and it doesn't mean I just stay out of it altogether.
For me, songwriting is sometimes on the guitar, but very often not. I think most of the ideas come when you're furthest away from the mechanics of playing music. So I find if I can get away into a room on my own, or perhaps socialising or something, then something will come into your head much more readily than if you're sitting down and trying to push it out. But once the ideas are there, once the basic ideas are there, yes, then you pick up the guitar and you try and put them into practice. And for me, everything is built around chords, I think, because my apprenticeship in guitar playing was in playing chords.
If I write a song which has a particular idea behind it and I can hear it in my head, I've then got to take it to the other three and they will see it totally differently and want to do it in a different way. And some of their input will be very good and very necessary, and some of it will probably actually destroy the meaning of the song. So there's all this interaction going on all the time. And Freddie sings much better than I do, but in some cases I would feel, the original meaning of the song doesn't get across. Now, when I became aware of this, I would try and design the song so that it had a wider meaning, knowing that it would change when it's done in front of an audience. And the motivation, the challenge, is to actually get something across in the right way that moves people. A song called Keep Yourself Alive on the first album, in my mind, was meant to be very sort of ironic, very sarcastic. And I was saying keep yourself alive actually isn't a very good aim in life. There should be more to life than that, But it became keep yourself alive and this is something great. And I had no control over that. It just changed. And I watched sort of open-mouthed thinking, oh, this is very strange. So after that, I was always aware of what happened. And I used to imagine what it would be like if Freddie was out there in front of 20,000 people singing this song. And I knew it would be different. So in a song like It's Late, I tried to broaden it so that it would still have a meaning, which was compatible with, first of all, Freddie and his inner feelings, and also the audience and their inner feelings. Generally, if an idea comes, just put it down in the simplest form, like on a little Walkman-type tape recorder I used to carry around, or else just jot it down on a piece of paper, a few lyrics or a few notes. So I think I just sang it into a tape recorder.
This is a blues song.
At that time, you know what it needs. You can hear the whole thing in your head. It's just a question of actually putting it on tape, making it happen. We'll Rock You has been with us for so long and has done so much for us then, I suppose. And it says a lot about what I had to say at the time. It says a lot, I think, still about humanity. I don't usually tell people this, but I thought, I'd seen people in football matches and all that kind of stuff, doing stuff, clapping and chanting and stuff. And I thought it would be the easiest thing in the world for people to go bump, bump with the foot and with the hands, right? So I thought, well, that's easy. People can do that and they'll enjoy doing that. And then they can sing this chant along with them, But actually, as far as I can tell, although it's still used by football clubs and all kinds of teams all throughout the world, which makes me very proud and very happy, I think the way it's done normally is all clapping and no feet. And that's probably because they're standing on concrete and the feet don't make much noise. But I noticed that in the concerts, if people did it, which they did after a while, they would go clap, clap, clap instead of bump, bump, crack, And it's only people like the, New Kids on the Block who get it right.
Stop, please, stop, please.
It was a time when Queen, this band which we had put together as boys, had matured and become something big around the whole world. Incredible. We had hit singles everywhere. The members of Queen had become slightly, I think, irritated with each other, or just too much. We'd been touring, recording the whole time without a break. In 1983, we decided we needed a break. And what I remember most vividly is waking up in LA, one of my favourite places, thinking, I could do anything today. The sun is shining, I've got friends here, why don't I make some phone calls? And That's what happened.
How did you fall in love with Starfleet?
I was definitely a fan. It was my little boy, really, who got me very keen on it and used to say, Daddy, get up, it's time for Starfleet. So I used to rush out of bed and tumble downstairs. And we used to watch it, and I was very keen on the music. We used to get a couple of verses at the end, and I thought, one day I should do something with this, it'd be great. I could hear it buzzing around in my head the way I wanted to do it. I got on the phone to Ed Van Halen. Do you fancy coming in the studio? Yeah! I went, yeah. Phil Chen, bass player, extraordinaire. Fred Mandel, great keyboard player, who was already involved with Queen. He'd done a lot of stuff on Radio Gaga. Magnificent keyboard player, actually. And Alan Gratzer, who's a drummer of REO Speedwagon, lives about 30 yards away, well, 100 yards away, on my street in LA. And we talked before, wouldn't it be nice to do something together? You never know. Well, this was the moment.
When did you get married? How many years ago?
It's a longer story than that, really.
How many years ago did you get married?
I was married for about 15 years or so, but it was like...
But you must have met her when she was like a model, up-and-coming model or something like that.
No, she was a student and I was a student.
Oh, really? Oh, you mean you met her before you got famous?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, yeah, no wonder you got to get a divorce. Oh, are you kidding? Oh, absolutely.
Well, I think we grew apart. I don't know if it
grew apart. That's it. It. Grew apart. That's because, once you achieve a certain degree of fame, women come on to you that normally wouldn't. True?
When I get famous, I'll tell you, Howard.
Yes. No, you're very famous, and the point is, what happened with you and your wife is you tried to be faithful in all these things, but what happened was the temptation of the life on the road, you have probably 18, 19-year-old aerobics instructors coming on to you. I mean, let's be honest.
Well...
You're a good person, but you couldn't resist temptation, true?
Yeah, but also there was something else underneath it. There was also the fact that actually I hadn't married the right woman. I think I had a nice smooth growth up to the point where Queen was this stadium band, and I thought I kind of had life sussed. I had a nice mum and dad, I had a nice wife and 3 beautiful children, and a band which seemed to ever be increasing in stature, and I was having a wonderful time, basically. And then more or less everything cracked at once. My father died. I split up with my wife over a long period during which I struggled against it. It took me about 1.5 years, in which time I couldn't move, got very depressed.
What stops you killing yourself? I think what stopped me was the fact that I had children and people who depended on me and people who loved me. In a sense, it's a very selfish thing to kill yourself because you make so much mess, you do terrible things to the people around you. That would have been awful for my children. I would like to tell you that there was a glimmer of hope there, but there wasn't at that time.
So I sat stuck in England in complete blackness for much too long. That's when I decided to make the solo album. I thought, I need a release, I need something that's going to pick me up off the floor, which can be the beginnings of me, because I didn't know who I was anymore. I lost my identity. Well, I'm seriously planning doing some stuff on my own now, trying to finish off my own album, and I hope to go out and play somewhere just to sort of get back into the swing of it, seeing as there probably won't be a Queen tour for some time. Because I'm getting very, very itchy. So I just want to get out there. So, more writing, and I'm doing stuff in my own little studio at the moment, just more and more fiddling, trying to get more direction.
I realised that if I did not deal with the depression, I was no use to anybody. So it's the same kind of logic as not killing yourself, Killing yourself is really bad for everybody around you, but also staying in depression is very bad for everyone around you. I did kind of chuck my life in and check myself into a depression clinic. Actually, the best thing I ever did, because it was a new start. It's like restarting your car, and I had to ditch my preconceptions, and that work definitely gave me a new energy. Yeah, it wasn't instant, but it gave me the tools to deal with life in a slightly different way.
But when I fell in love with this woman, who was not my wife, there was absolutely no way I could shake it. Well, Anita was an amazing force to come into my life, and still is.
Baby, I know where this road leads, but I'm walking. Baby, I know what my poor heart needs, but I'm talking. You know I'm talking of love.
The media launch for Talking of Love plumbed new depths of boredom with the usual Fleet Street liggers quaffing vast amounts of Bucks Fizz and speculating on the exact nature of the Dobson-May relationship. Brian and Anita were in a very silly mood. Could this be the joys of love? Eventually, I had to tell them to shut up. Yes, exactly. Can you please be quiet? Let's get on with this interview. Where did you first meet?
We met at Down and Out in Beverly Hills, which was a film preview. He had to climb over me to get to his seat. He and his wife, both. I take up a lot of room at movies.
Who are you? I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if somebody used this wonderful actress, this wonderful voice, on a record the way it should be done, you know, to get all that emotion across that she gets. My voice is going croaky because I've been talking to these piranhas over there for so long.
Brian rang up and said, I've written this song for you. Do you want to hear it? And I said, yeah, all right. And then this tinny thing played down the telephone.
Really impressed. Yeah, I could tell, really impressed.
Anita and Brian have obviously set up a mutual admiration society, but how did they feel about front-page stories of their affair?
Initially, I thought I hate it and I don't like to be talked about that way, but it's kind of an obvious thing for people to do. And when I actually read it, I just laughed because it's so obviously preposterous, and I could go through every line and tell you, you know, it's just obviously made up stuff.
How does all this make you feel then?
Well, I suppose it's something you have to learn to live with. I'm just thrilled that Brian's taken it in the spirit that he has, because I guess I knew it was inevitable that eventually that would happen. If I made a record with anyone, they'd say I was having an affair with them, you know, whoever it was. And I was a little bit apprehensive when it finally did sort of, but as Brian said, it was so stupid that we just laughed about it. You know, there's not time really, you know, I mean...
Oh, you poor thing!
I know, isn't it? That's what I mean, send the marriage proposal.
My relationship with her had to be secret at that time, which is not nice really, you know. The last time I saw Freddie was Anita and I went round to see him, and he was in bed with the curtains open so he could see out into his garden. I think I was talking about things that were in his garden, saying, oh, look, that's really interesting, that's really... And he said, guys, you don't need to feel like you need to make conversation. He said, you know, I'm just so happy that you're here, you know, so even if we say nothing, it's just having these moments. We were together for most of my adult life, you know, since I was not much more than 20, I was doing stuff with Freddie. And it's really like losing a brother.
This is Frederick Mercury signing off. Bye-bye.
The first three were quite awkward. I didn't know whether I was supposed to be singing or playing at any time. You know, combining the two is quite difficult, and also making this connection with the audience. People pay their money, you know, and you have an obligation to do something special. I think, yeah, it's not enough to just shuffle on and say, well, this is what I do.
tell you something. I ain't even going to try this because this is impossible to play with. So I ain't even going to try to play the solo. So we do something else, okay?
What was the time like leading up to his death?
The image of Freddie Mercury is stronger than ever for you.
Why do you think he kept it secret for so long?
But Freddie's influence must still be very strong in a way.
Absolutely everywhere, you know.
A good opening for Guns N' Roses?
It was brilliant opening for Guns N' Roses. They were great. They were a fantastic audience, as a matter of fact, and it gave me a great feeling of satisfaction being able to get across to them, and the fact that they didn't want us to leave mostly after we finished playing.
So you opened for Guns N' Roses? That had to be cool. You probably saw a lot of cool backstage stuff going on, huh?
Their backstage is very similar to what ours used to be.
Oh, yeah?
I have a lot of respect for them and a lot of love for them.
Who's a better guitar player, you or Slash? Who do you think's better?
He probably is.
I was doing Resurrection all through that last period when Freddie was going downhill fairly rapidly. And I thought, you know, his body's going to go downhill, but his spirit is getting stronger and stronger. And so I really enjoyed Resurrection, and it taught me such a lot. You know, it brought me up. And I think that's the high point of the album, really. You know, Too Much Love Will Kill You is perhaps the blackest. You know, there's very little hope in that song. But in Resurrection, it's all like, okay, there's crap here, everything's terrible, there's wreckage, but I'm up, I'm off on my way, you know. I wrote Nothing But Blue to a backing track which Cozy had, as a matter of fact. But I wrote it the night before Freddie died, and I had this strong feeling that it was just about to happen. So I wrote the song around what I felt about that. But even in the midst of that, you know, as a songwriter, I don't know if I'm a songwriter, but as a person, I'm thinking about his life, and I'm thinking about how I feel losing him. I'm thinking about what my life means. And again, it relates to my theme. You know, it relates to how, you know, how did Freddie see this? You know, how did he see his way out of the black spots? Because Freddie also had some very dark spots, you know. And I thought, you know, what you learn from Freddie is this incredible sort of way of brushing things aside. You know, if he couldn't solve a problem, he'd say, fuck it, I don't even want to think about it. I'm off here, you know, I'm off in this direction. He would wrench himself out and forward, you know. So that's the feeling that I got, and that's what I try to put in that song, you know. I'm very sad, but there's still this feeling that I'm going to get through somehow, you know.
So the album is
Up and downhill.
full of sad feelings, but also kind of optimistic. Mixture of those two things that there's still hope.
Yeah, well, I only found it gradually, and I think if you listen to the album, you'll find it's kind of jumbled up. But there's this theme running through it, and there are different views of the same piece of life, which is gradually changing. And each time there's a different feeling, a different atmosphere.
Like I'm Scared, it's very touching and chaotic, and
very small.
the beginning is like a
That's right, like a
song to a baby.
Exactly, yeah.
What is the future of Queen at this moment? Is there a future of Queen?
I think the only future is the past, really. I think there's a great future for the Queen material, and I hope that it will always live in some form, but I don't think we can go out and be Queen anymore. It doesn't make sense.
I wouldn't rule it out. I wouldn't rule it out. I'm serious about that. I think we're actually now coming to the point where Queen will be going again. We'll never get over Freddie, but I think the period of mourning is past, and it's time for a new leaf and a fresh look at it. And John and I will definitely be carrying things on, with or without Brian. That's up to him.
I think I was reluctant to get back into opening those boxes and dealing with Freddie's voice there, and it was tough to begin with. Roger made the first inroad, and he took some of the tapes down to his studio and started working on them. Of course, that's the trigger I need, because I hear what he's saying, and I go, no, don't do it like this, you've got to do it like this, So my juices were working, and I just dived in before I had time to think. And I took over some particular tracks. It was a monumental task.
Sort out the pieces of this supposed album, which will contain the last things that Freddie did, and various things, some new which we're sorting out at the moment. So it feels quite strange, but we do still exist, and this is what we're doing.
Made in Heaven, the final album from Queen.
The new song, which Brian happened to write, and gave me a tape, said, what do you think of this song? And I actually forgot to listen to it for a while.
He put it away in a drawer somewhere, because he was busy or whatever. And it was months later when Roger phoned up, suddenly excited, and said, I just listened to the track and it's amazing and we have to do it as a Queen song. It was very odd because it was the time when Princess Diana had just died, and he listened to it and he could hear it was about Freddie, and he could also hear it was about Princess Diana. He could also hear it was about Gianni Versace and all these things. And he said, I'm sure this is an important thing and we should be doing it as Queen.
We are today trying to make a little scene of how not to film a video, you see? These days...
Very convincing.
Yeah, very convincing, yeah. The band is featuring somebody on guitar, I forgot his name, but what's his... Oh, yes. See, also this, try to come into my nose in this.
The last shot was of the champagne glass, just so that we had it covered. And I was very keen that we should have it in case, because you never know how you finally edit a video. Sometimes you change your mind in the edit. And we had a final shot all planned, but then we thought, well, maybe this glass, which has been there all along, would be a nice way to end as well. And in the end, there's just one spotlight on it. And then Rudy goes, cut. And just before he goes cut, something happened. And I went, what was that? Did something happen? And everybody said, no, I don't think anything happened. Anyway, we ran the thing back, and you see this little tiny moth come down, and it sort of wheels around the glass, and then off into space.
Come on, kids.
I mean, moths is just what
Get
you
into
need
the
to
last
find.
setup.
Look!
So you got a new album out, new single out.
Yes.
It's been a while, though, since you...
It's been a long time, yeah. It wasn't like I was doing nothing else, mind you. I did a lot of projects during that time, including a couple of big Queen projects, which we really, I don't think, will be doing for a while now. I think it was time to move away again. I think it reminded me that I like being on my own these days. I like being able to explore my own avenues. And that's what this album is.
Beautiful cover of the album, and the album is called Another World.
This beautiful tree.
Yeah, there's a story about this tree, you got to tell it,
Yeah, I saw this tree in a magazine somewhere, a travel magazine, and I thought I have to find that tree because of the wonderful shape. It looks like a woman, and the album was about another world, things not being quite what they seem, and this seemed the best kind of visual parallel. So we went to the island where this tree lives, in a secret island in the Canaries.
You're very involved, because we all know that when you take a picture, a snapshot, it's done in a sec. But how long did you have? Wasn't that very tiring?
The funny thing is, I was doing everything but that when we were doing the session. I was trying to sort of make the same shape as the tree or interact with it somehow. And then I got really tired. I went, oh, okay, because my back was aching. And luckily, Richard clicked, and I thought, maybe that's the one, and he did too. I think a lot of people will identify because
I think to some extent we all live in our dreams. I think there are many people who see a parallel universe for themselves. They think, if this hadn't happened, I could have been doing this, and I could have been here doing this, I could have been with this person. And I think it's something that occupies quite a bit of our thought a lot of the time. It's secret thoughts, it's things we can't talk about, you know. And so I began to think it was an important song, and I thought in the end that this is more what the album's about than anything, in a strange way. So it became the sort of theme of the album, and it became the title of the album too.
Stuttgart. I'll have to say it's an honor and a privilege. How you all doing out there, okay? You sure about that? Ah, we're all doing fine up here. As a matter of fact, I came over here to buy me a Cadillac. Went to the shop and they said, man, we can't sell you a Cadillac. We can sell you a nice Porsche. I said, I got a Porsche. I sit on my porch every night, watch the sun go down. I hear you like a little rock here, is that right? Well, I brought me a beat rock. Oh, it's not blinding you too much. It's a present from the king himself. Elvis, Costello. Well, I had to carry on a little song now, which I wrote last night in the bath. This little song is called, Come On, Baby. That's, Come On, Baby. Maestro, hit me!
Why should we care? It's a good question. My view is a little different from most ecologists. What you're talking about is the balance of species. The only certainty in this world is change, and as you say, populations come, populations go, and there is no balance of nature. I discovered this a little while ago. You know, people speak about the balance of nature. There is only change in nature, and certainly animals become extinct, etc., etc. My view is that every single animal matters. It's not just about populations, it's not about numbers, it's not about survival of a species. It's about one animal here, like you, sir, who has feelings, who has dreams, who maybe has a family. To me, I regard it as a first principle that any creature that has feelings is worthy of respect and care. So it's really not about populations to me, and it's not about balances. It's about caring about a soul, a person, an animal. Some of us, we have double standards. A lot of us have cats and dogs, and we'd be mortified if something happens to them, And yet we think it's fine for cows to be bred, and for the only purpose of being killed for food. A lot of us think it's okay to go out and have fun destroying animals. It still goes on. And to me, this is inhuman. To me, this is the darker side of human nature, which we should be growing out of. We are human beings, and if we are given any chance on this planet to be special, it should be that we rise above these feelings of not caring. So why do I care? I think it's a first principle for me. It's a bit like Martin Luther King saying, we hold it self-evident. To me, I hold it self-evident that every single animal is worthy of some respect.
The most important thing in your life?
Most important thing in my life? Love. That's it.
Was never